Welcome into another edition of Kickin It. I'm Jeff Woody. I'm here with Grant Mahoney. We are almost all the way through our series of introducing new folks and new schools to the Iowa State fans. As always, we are brought to you by Kelderman Manufacturing. Get yourself something nice for your heavy machinery, for your house, for your garage, for anything.
Your yard.
Your yard. You could do multiple. You could do something that moves in and out, like a post that you can move. It has like decorative something on there, like an Iowa State logo. You can like hang a bird feeder on, and maybe like a. Anyway, Grant, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Jeff. How you doing? Oh, not so bad. And you? You know what that's from?
No.
Letterkenny, dude.
How are you now?
Oh, not so bad. And you? Jeez, Jeff.
I don't consume enough
Get out.
media and
Get out,
things.
man.
I'm just watching. It's basically just sports and Jeopardy, the two things that I watch.
Jeopardy.
How
How old are you?
Are you 1,000?
Yeah, you dog on quote old people a lot, and here we are watching Jeopardy.
Okay, you say a lot. That happened, I think, what, once? Once?
At least twice, I think. You said 40 is old. I'm like, dude, I'm 35. 40's not that old.
That was in reference to people thinking that I am older than I am, which would be about 8 years older than I really am, saying that old as an adjective relative to my current situation, old not being old generally.
I think people just think you're old because you're bald. No
Yeah.
disrespect, but
That's what it is. People when they look at me, they think that's a 40-year-old and 33. But I feel like people will be saying that that's a 40-year-old for about 15 years between now and when I'm like 47. Everyone's like, that guy's 40. So right now it makes me look older. But as I get closer to 40 and or over 40, it's going to be either right on time or like that guy looks great.
Do you have a skincare routine?
Yeah,
Good.
I do. Also use
moisturizer and sunscreen.
and good sunscreen because I'm also super pale. I feel like we have, Grant, you have an apology to make.
Yeah, I do. So I'm not sure how many crossover listeners we've got from Williams and Bloom, but Jeff and I filled in for Williams and Bloom this week. What's up with my microphone here? And
It's just, for those that are only listening to this on audio, it just keeps limp falling down. So
yeah, I'm trying to
that's something you're used to.
concoct it so it's not just covering my face, but whatever. So on the Williams and Bloom Wednesday episode, I a little rusty in
Factual inaccuracies.
Yes, in off-season form, I had said the Big Citrus was a true freshman last year. He was not. He was a true sophomore last year. And I also
appreciate
said,
the second O in sophomore there.
yep. And I also said that Will McLaughlin last year was a redshirt sophomore. This year he is a redshirt sophomore, but he is a true junior. So I apologize to our listeners for that because I am a big Big Citrus fan. And I should
Clearly not big enough.
I know. I when I saw it, I was like, not as big as I thought it was. But you know what? I feel like from year 2020 up until probably last week, it's been 2 years. So 2 years while also feeling like 6 years. So who knows? Big Citrus could actually be a fifth-year senior. I don't know.
He's just here. He's just, we know who's going to be on the team this year.
Yeah, he's there. I need to stop saying he's this when I don't know because I thought I did know. I was very confident about it.
You could be wrong.
You agreed with it too, though. So
I did. I co-opted the idea.
You did.
Yep. I'm not going to apologize because I get stuff wrong. I don't take this as a God's honest truth.
I know, but I lose credibility when I'm just, dig my heels in. And yeah, he was a true freshman last year. The dude has
I don't think he was.
a year and a half in the weight room. And now he's going to be even better this year, which he was better last year. And I think he'll be even better this year in the 4 down line. And when can't really double team him every single time.
It's true. You know who's going to need to double team Big Citrus? Were they to play this year? It's Colorado.
Colorado, yeah. We got a fun one on today. So Adam Munsterteiger is with us. He's a guy who covers Colorado 247. Been there since 2003. So he's
seen a lot of football.
Yeah, he's
a lot
seen
of
a
Boulder.
football. Good and bad, mostly bad. I feel like, although Colorado does have a national championship to their name, which Iowa State does not, but I feel like they've kind of been on like a similar-ish, up until Campbell, I would say, similar-ish type of seasons. I always love playing at Colorado. I've got family out there. Boulder's just a beautiful place. I'm really happy that Colorado's back in the Big 12. But we've got Adam Munsterteiger joining us today from 247. All right, and now we welcome in Adam Munsterteiger, publisher of BuffStampede.com since 2003. He also covers the University of Colorado football, men's basketball, and recruiting for 247. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Of course. No, it's exciting. I'm happy for Colorado to get back in the Big 12 and have some of these renewed rivalries that we had. Unfortunately, Iowa State's not going to be one of them this year. But like I told you guys before we hit record, I'm looking forward to getting back to Ames. And it's it was a tough road for Colorado in the Pac-12, I guess is how I'll say it succinctly for you guys.
So I played at Colorado.
Same. I played in 2010
Yep. So we've played at Boulder, one of my favorite stadiums that I've ever played in.
for sure.
I was sad to see Colorado go to the Pac-12, and I'm glad that they're back. And like you said, Iowa State does not play Colorado this year. But you've been around Colorado football for quite a while, so I wanted to ask you, just how has the landscape changed, I guess, since you've been there, and more specifically, going from Mel Tucker, who was at Michigan State, and then to Carl Carell, and then now, polar opposite, to Deion Sanders, who has injected some life and optimism back into the Colorado football program.
It's really been a roller coaster ride, to be honest with you. Every time, and even going back before kind of Mel Tucker, you talk about Mike McIntyre in 2016 in the Pac-12, they win the South Division, and it feels like, oh, we finally got a football team we can be proud of. But that was such a senior-laden team with so many guys that went off to the NFL that Mike McIntyre wasn't able to build off that. So then you go through another coaching search, and that's been kind of the issue, is the revolving door of coaches, both the head coach and just even assistants. For a long time, Colorado couldn't give multi-year contracts to assistant coaches, so they would be in and out so much. So there was just so much coaching turnover. And then Mel Tucker comes in, and even though they go 5-7 back in 2019, he put together a pretty good recruiting class and just seemed to have it on the right trajectory and did a great job presenting his program through the media. And it wasn't one of those typical December coaching departures. Mel Tucker left Colorado after the February signing period. And so they were scrambling from that point forward. They just needed somebody that wanted that job. It looked like Steve Sarkisian might have taken the job quickly, but then Nick Saban kind of talked to him about coming back there, and that worked out well for him, getting the Texas offer the next year. So they played it safe, and they brought in Carl Durrell. And he is, as I've said many times, a guy that I would like to have as my neighbor. You can depend on Carl Durrell. He's going to be somebody that's going to be do the right thing, but he doesn't have any type of charisma to him. And so he comes in and actually did a pretty good job when COVID hit of kind of keeping things together. They go 4-2 during that abbreviated 2020 season, but even late during that year, they got blasted in the Alamo Bowl by Texas. And so you kind of were starting to see, okay, maybe this was kind of fake, more of a COVID success. They had to reschedule a bunch of games, and they were one of the teams that just didn't really get hit a whole lot by COVID. And so his tenure from there was just a disaster. Colorado had the worst football team in the country in 2022. And I don't even really think you can debate it. We're talking FBS ranks. You look at the scoring margin, and other teams could really name their score against Colorado. And so they fire him, and there's a feeling that Colorado's program is close to being dead. They weren't able to bring in transfers very well because they had certain academic restrictions that other teams and other power conference programs didn't. So they'd submit an evaluation for 11 receiver transfers, and only 4 of them could get into Colorado. And so now your pool of transfers is so shallow that it's hard to bring in guys, especially given that they haven't had recent success. And so I'll end this long-winded answer by saying that they were in desperation mode. And so they got those transfer restrictions fixed, and Coach Prime arrives, and this is where the story starts. And it's been like being part of a movie, to be honest with you, since then, because there are so many eyeballs on Colorado. But he was the perfect fit for Colorado because he could come in and do what he wanted to do, take a sledgehammer to whatever he needed to in the program, because you knew that he was going to attract talent. And so Colorado was borderline desperate, and Coach Prime arrived. He says that he's a need to be needed guy, and he was needed in Boulder.
So one thing that's interesting, we're during the Olympics. So if you're listening to this, several weeks down the road, I'm using an Olympic parallel. So my favorite event of the Olympics so far has been the men's 1500, which if you haven't watched the men's 1500 by now, I mean, just go, it is so cool.
That was a great race too.
So why was that such an interesting thing? So Jakob Ingebrigtsen is the Norwegian runner who ran the 1500. He won the gold in Tokyo, and he is a shit talking fool. I mean, he's got his earrings in, he's got his tats on. He'll say, "Screw you, I'm the best," to your face. And then someone stood up to him, and a guy named Sims from the UK, who then those two are racing each other, and then eventually an American kind of comes through and wins that. But the reason why that's so interesting is because personality drives sports, and personality drives attention. And Jakob Ingebrigtsen, you either love Jakob Ingebrigtsen or you hate him, but either way, you tuned in. And Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes are kind of the Jakob Ingebrigtsen of football right now, in that Shadur Sanders is really good. Like, as you have so much, Travis Hunter might be the best all-around football player in America. You have all this talent, but you also have this giant target that they paint on their own chest that they then have to either stand up and deal with or get punched by. And so Ingebrigtsen ends up getting fourth. It feels to me like Colorado has the same line, because they're going to get everybody's best shot, that you paint that target on your chest. People are going to come for that target. And it feels like last year, when they put themselves in the map by beating TCU in that Colorado State game and all that stuff going on, people didn't know that target existed as much. And then it kind of showed up, and they went, it was a really bad second half of that season because everybody wanted to hit that target, and Colorado just didn't have enough beef to be able to push back on that. And so they just kept getting hit and kept getting hit and kept getting hit. And I mean, not metaphorically, like physically, like we're getting just not enough blocking to go around. This year, I imagine they've addressed the offensive line, and they've addressed just the size that they didn't have, or the physicality they didn't have, because this year that target's still there. What do you feel like they have done differently this year, and whether it's offensive line recruits or just different changes they've made to be able to stand up to that target that they painted themselves better? Because, like I said, Ingebrigtsen, he's either going to win or he's going to be off the podium. Colorado feels the same. Either they're going to be like the top of the conference, or because of that target, they're going to finish like 13th. Like, it doesn't feel like there's much ground. So what have they done to change what the back half of last year happened into this year?
I was wondering if there was a question at the end of that monologue.
You said long-winded.
No, it was
and you're
good.
apologizing for long-winded. Hey, buddy. Hi.
No, there's a lot of good stuff in there. Like, I'll go back to last year. There was a target on their back because of the viewers that were tuning into Colorado football games. And if you're the opponent, those many eyeballs are going to be on you as well. And so, yes, there was that target. It really showed itself when they went out to Oregon. And Oregon just, you got the whole "we're not in it for clicks" speech from Dan Lanning. And that was the one game that I would say where like the target on their back really showed. But really, genuinely, last year, it was not a target on their back. We're getting up for this game. It was we figured out how to exploit Colorado's weakness. And that, you mentioned it. It was their offensive line. It was in that Colorado State game that was really late at night and went to double overtime. And
great game.
Yeah, a great football game. Colorado comes out victorious, but Colorado State did some stuff schematically, defensively, and even offensively that kind of exposed some of the weaknesses that Colorado had. Now, Coach Prime takes over in December. You have basically 2 transfer windows to change an entire roster. You're going to get some really talented guys in that group, but they missed on some of those guys because you didn't have a ton of time to really evaluate these guys, and it was kind of just trying to bring in as much talent as you could in a quick period of time. And so throughout the course of last season, they did get their weaknesses exposed. And so then you go back into the transfer portal. And now, instead of coaching, Jackson State in the Celebration Bowl, Coach Prime and his staff are right there at the beginning of the offseason. Didn't go to a bowl game. So the focus was all on recruiting. The second that portal hit, they really improved their talent level again through both transfer portal cycles this past year. And so now you're talking about, instead of last year, you've got a couple transfer portal cycles, a pretty short period of time to evaluate guys, to now a full off season. And now you've got 4 transfer portal cycles, and you've seen the improvement. And the emphasis was on the offensive line last year with Bill O'Boyle as your offensive line coach. Let's bring in some scrappy under the radar guys. And for whatever reason, when they got tested, they turtled, and it was not pretty. This year it was, well, we got to go out and we've got to get a Tyler Johnson from Houston that is established as a good pass protector. We've got to bring in Justin Mayers from UTEP that's got an NFL draft grade, that's played a lot of football. So the caliber of guys they were going after was a lot different this year. And that goes kind of back to the positive of having a target on your back and having the eyeballs, is that a lot of these transfers they brought in were sitting back watching Colorado at their last school saying, I can help these guys. And so you've got, yes, this target on your back, but you've also got these viewers to be able to attract guys through this new transfer portal era where you don't have to tamper because you're on TV all the time. And those guys can see, well, oh, Shedeur Sanders got sacked 52 times. If I was on that offensive line, that wouldn't happen. And so I want to live up to that challenge. And now these offensive linemen in Colorado's program, if they live up to the task, I mean, talk about the exposure those guys are going to get, especially the upperclassmen that are trying to go from a UTEP or a Houston to getting drafted. They're going to have all those eyeballs on them. So the target on your back is something that comes with Coach Prime being a marketing genius and in getting folks to want to see this team win or fail. And that end result, I don't think on the football field matters as much. It's more based on talent than it is, this is my Super Bowl feeling going into the game, I feel like.
Do you feel like so Dion you've mentioned it, has really built the roster around the transfer portal? Maybe a multi-part question I got coming here. Do you think that's sustainable? Because, I know he has gotten some good high school guys. Obviously, Travis Hunter and Shedeur, son, which should have gone with him anyways, out of high school. But he's really kind of gone after the transfer portal market heavy while still offering quite a few guys in high school. His first two classes have been more transfer portal heavy than high school. I look at it almost like the old Kentucky, the Calipari men's basketball roster, where they have a lot of really, really talented freshmen coming in, but they're freshmen, so they're not used to playing with each other. Guys coming in from the transfer portal, they're not used to playing with each other, so it's tougher to gel sometimes. Do you think that's sustainable for Prime 2, if he is going to continue to dive into the transfer portal that way? Or do you feel like this is just something he was doing to he had mentioned it to kind of turn the roster over and kind of push out, the guys from the old staff to bring in who he wants and to bring in some guys who are seasoned and tenured who have played elsewhere, just to kind of get some footing back in the program to then start recruiting into the high school level and kind of build the roster that way?
Given where Colorado was in 2022, he didn't really have a choice but to rebuild the roster that way. Now, you're seeing it become more of the norm at other programs, not to the extent that Colorado has done. I would say, to answer your question, 5-10 years ago, I don't think you can build a college football program this way, but things are changing, they're evolving. And I don't know if you're going to have a ton of that continuity in locker rooms anymore. Now, the one area that makes you concerned if you're going to keep doing this as Colorado's program going forward is the trenches, because if you have a young man that goes to Utah and has success on either line, I'm just using Utah as an example, but if they're having success, they're probably not hitting the portal, right? So finding guys, you're always going to be able to find receivers in the portal, because you're going to find some guy that was overlooked coming out of FAU or FIU or one of those Florida schools that is a burner and wants to go to a power conference school. And so you're going to get those type of guys, the skill players. But the trenches is where it's concerning long-term. Now, I mentioned the experience they brought in the trenches this year. Part of that is Colorado having this exposure in Shedeur Sanders, being able to provide this platform for the offensive lineman to show, if I can protect him, I can play in the NFL. And so that works for this year. Long-term, you've got to develop, I think, a little bit more through the high school ranks, especially in the trenches, to have a really healthy program. But when you have Shedeur Sanders with 1 year of eligibility left, Travis Hunter is going to the NFL as well next year. You've got to try to maximize that as much as possible. And that's what we've seen now. Their high school recruiting has taken an uptick this year. I expect them to take more guys, but I think as long as Deion Sanders is around in Boulder, they will be more transfer portal heavy, which, again, it's kind of yet to be determined because it's kind of unprecedented at the Power 5 level. But These power conference programs are starting to kind of follow suit a little bit, especially if you're in rebuild mode. So it's going to be hard to, have those feel good senior day stories, unfortunately, now going forward of this guy came in as a true freshman, redshirted, went through adversity, and now here he is as a senior and he's a leading tackler. Like those stories just are not going to be as common in college football.
Which is sad because that's something that you love. You love to, watch the guy grow up and, I've got high hopes for this guy coming in, didn't play, had to redshirt, sit behind whoever. And then, you see him senior year and grow through his career.
It is, it's a little disappointing, but I think it's still, it's still in the best interest of the kid. There are still going to be guys that do that, and there are still going to be guys that even, you transfer as a sophomore, and now you were there for 2 or 3 years, and you redshirt and whatever. I think it'll still exist. It'll just look a little bit different. You mentioned Travis Hunter. How much in the upcoming, I guess, over the course of the recruiting cycle, whether it's transfer or high school, how much did they address his playing both ways? Because I imagine you can't keep a guy like Travis Hunter off the field that long because he's so good on both sides of the ball. But his offensive play is where he got hurt last year, so he couldn't then play on defense. And now you're out with you got one injury, and now you're out 2 players. Like the closest that Iowa State has played to that is a guy like Cooper DeJean, where Cooper DeJean for Iowa gets hurt. Well, now their return game, which is basically Iowa's entire offense, that's gone, and your best tackling corner. So that guy gets hurt, you lose really 2 players. Travis Hunter, the same thing happened last year. He was on offense. He gets smoked on the sideline, dirty shot, whatever you want to call it. He's out for 3 or 4 weeks. You lose then the corner and a wide receiver. I imagine that would prompt them to readjust a little bit. Have you gotten any conversation, or have they talked about Travis Hunter's playing both ways? Are they dialing one back to play the other? Just because he is so good, but 112 snaps a game, 112 opportunities to sprain an ankle, hurt your back, hurt your shoulder, whatever. Can't do that the entire season and expect to make it all the way through. So again, long-winded question, but how are they going to go into this year with Travis Hunter?
Travis Hunter will be on the field maybe even more this year.
Okay, there we go. Next question.
He's a unicorn. I get it. You're talking about the more snaps you play, the more your risk of getting hurt is. Now, from a conditioning standpoint, it's not an issue. I've never covered a college athlete that just never breaks a sweat, never gets tired, no matter what they ask him to do. Guys could be over there throwing up in a trash can, and Travis Hunter is on one of the YouTube channels that Coach Prime has doing, different dances. That's just the type of stamina he has. And I think there's some part of Deion Sanders that wishes he could have played a little bit more both ways in college. He got a little chance to make some plays offensively during his football career, but he sees maybe this as an opportunity that Travis Hunter can kind of live the way the reps that he wanted to play back in those days, because he really is as good a receiver as he is a defensive back.
It's wild.
And so yeah, I heard your case of he gets knocked out in that Colorado State game, and you lose also, not just a receiver, but a cornerback as well. If he doesn't play both ways, you're losing one of those anyway.
That's true.
What happens if he is out there and doesn't get the cheap shot on him and is able to play a full 12 games, however many Colorado plays, 13, 14, and is in the Heisman discussion because of it. So there's the upside of it as well. And for Colorado, they got to maximize his ability, because he's got a chance, if he stays healthy, to go down as putting together the best two-way season in college football history. He wasn't that far off from it last year, and he missed a lot of games. If Colorado can then win games as a result of the improved line play, then that even exposes Travis Hunter more later in the season when you're playing in October and November in some of those nationally televised games. So there is risk obviously involved there. There are times that Travis Hunter hits the turf, and normally you'd expect a guy to be down for a couple minutes, and Travis Hunter just kind of rolls off it and jumps up like he didn't even get hit. So he is the most unique player I've ever covered in college.
Yeah. Also, just one thing on that, and then you can ask a question. The interesting thing about that too is the offensive line has a lot to do with this too, because If you're down 42-20 with 18 minutes to play in the game, you got to throw the ball a ton. And the defense knows you got to throw the ball a ton. If they can play a little bit more physical, if they can protect the quarterback a little bit more, Sanders is only attempting 32 passes in a game as opposed to 50. And then just the likelihood of getting teed off goes down. So yeah, that's true. Yeah, you lose. If you don't play them, you lose one of them at least.
Well, and football is a physical sport anyway, so
What?
you wear pads for a reason, Jeff. There's a reason we're not wearing leather helmets anymore. So Adam, you had mentioned that this is the last year for Shedeur and Travis, so they'll both enter the draft after this year. Are both projected top 5-10 picks in the upcoming draft. What are the expectations for Colorado going into this season?
I keep saying this. I have covered a lot of 5 and 7 teams at Colorado, and when I go out and get around this team, this is not a 5 and 7 team. If they go 5 and 7, something went wrong. There was coaching issues or continuity issues or for injury issues or something happened there. So I think the floor for this football team is 6 and 6. I have no idea what the ceiling is because you're bringing in all these new pieces and you like the resumes they show up with, and everything sounds great in preseason camp. But you got to kick the football off, and they've got a pretty similar schedule in terms of difficulty to last year. There's never been a Colorado schedule I've looked at more that has more coin flip games than this. It's like, I don't know, this is going to be a tough matchup, but if Colorado's living up to it, this is a game they can win. And back when they were in the Pac-12, it was like Oregon, USC, you just kind of mark up his losses. Going into the Big 12 this year, I think it's going to be a lot of competitive football. Do they exceed those expectations quite a bit? Possibly, but I'm kind of in that 7 and 5 range for this football team, just because there are so many question marks still with this team. But then on the flip side of it, I am pretty adamant that the folks that think this is going to be a disaster really just have not been paying attention to the type of talent that they have brought in.
So Colorado opens hosting North Dakota State, perennial powerhouse.
Physical as hell too.
Yeah, at the 1AA, I guess, FCS level. Then they go to Nebraska. We both played at Nebraska. That's the loudest place I've ever played. And Matt Rule is saying that, they are kind of a projected dark horse college football playoff contender by some people. So some people are saying Nebraska could be really good this year. Some people are saying they might just be 6 and 6 again. Either way, though, Nebraska could be improved as well. I don't hope that Colorado goes 0-2, but say that go 0-2, will people start to kind of get, unruly and kind of, talk about Dion and be on the hot seat at all? Or is it still kind of, it's only a second year, give him some time?
Will people get unruly? Yes. Will he be on the hot seat? No. I think that as long as Deion Sanders wants to be a head coach in Boulder, he gives them the best opportunity. I don't think they go 0-2, so I guess that's you cross that bridge if you get to that. But yeah, you're gonna have a lot of people out there that are gonna have a lot to say if that's the case.
Those are two tough teams. I mean, those are two tough non-con, teams. You played against North Dakota State, Jeff?
I did not. That was my redshirt year.
I did beat them, but they were still.
Well, that was the last time. I think that was the last time that North Dakota State, for like a 6-year period, the last time
Longer.
they lost,
It's like a decade.
The last time they lost to a
Division I team.
They kicked the ass of everybody else. Instead of pivoting a little bit away from the football team specifically, Colorado, we've done interviews with 3 of the 4 new teams, and we've asked this question kind of the other ones, but this is unique because Colorado is coming back. It's not coming to the conference for the first time. What is the perception of people around Boulder about the Big 12 and the move to it? Because I think the other schools, like in Arizona, yeah, this is cool. It's totally new. And Utah, this feels like a culture fit and whatever. But Colorado, it's returning, but it's returning to a different home because Texas and Oklahoma are gone. Nebraska's gone. They some of those rivalries aren't there anymore. So, what's the Colorado fan base collectively's perception of the Big 12? And then, I guess, secondary, Iowa State specifically, as they're coming back to the conference?
Because they were one of the original Big 8, so I welcome them back with open arms.
I'm going to try to make an analogy here. It'd be like if you dated somebody in your 20s and it was going great, but then you just kind of went your separate ways because it made sense. Colorado had 5 times as many alumni in the Pac-12 footprint as they did the old Big 12 footprint. So it was like, we can go take these road trips to these great places, and it's going to be great. And so you go into this other relationship, and it just the window dressing was really nice when you signed up for it, and it just turned to be a really, really ugly relationship where
The lights come on, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, it was bad, and Colorado was kind of stuck in the conference for a while because they were trying to figure out where the best place to move next would be, or maybe the Pac-12 could figure it out with a TV contract, and they just never got that done. The leadership at the top was a disaster with Larry Scott, and so now going back to the Big 12, you're now a little bit older, and she's got a few wrinkles, but you're excited because of this past relationship was just such a disaster. And you wish that Nebraska was still in the conference. You wish Missouri was still in the conference, Texas, Oklahoma. But at the same time, you're just ready to have competent leadership. Brett Yormark definitely seems to be that. And now you get to, instead of going to these wine and cheese environments in the Pac-12, Stanford games where nobody shows up to the games. It's just kind of a dead atmosphere. To now you go to these college towns where that environment is there. They played TCU to open up last season, and just walking around the tailgate scene before the game, before I head in, was like, you just don't see this in the Pac-12. There's just more enthusiasm in the Big 12. So it's like the Pac-12 experience kind of taught Colorado fans that maybe the grass isn't always greener. And I think for the most part, folks are excited now. Will there be as many Colorado fans traveling to games now because it's a little bit tougher to get to Ames or Manhattan than it is to fly into San Francisco? That might be the case, but I think just from a general culture fit from a football standpoint, Colorado was always a better fit for the Big 12.
That's the one thing I don't like about these new conference realignments. I wish it was more regional because, I have to imagine Colorado fans probably aren't going to fly to West Virginia or to UCF or Cincinnati, whereas, they could have, he said, hopped on a short flight to go somewhere else too.
Lincoln.
Yeah. So it's nice though to hear that, Colorado had the wine and cheese experience and they're coming back to the burgers and beer. And have fans that show up, don't be afraid to let out a burp. I wanted to pivot to basketball. So Colorado's had some decent teams in basketball, and they had a really good guy last year. I can't remember his name. He's entered the NBA draft. And then obviously Eddie Lampkin, who Iowa State fans should be familiar with, who was at TCU, came to Colorado, is now at Syracuse. What should we expect from the Colorado basketball team? Because the Big 12 is an absolute meat grinder, and adding, Arizona,
Cincinnati's getting better.
BYU, I think, is obviously this will be a second year, but they've gotten better. UCF is kind of sneaky. Adding Colorado into the mix into the Big 12 basketball scene, though, what are your thoughts there, and what are the expectations there? Because the Big 12 is going to be really good again this year.
Yeah, you mentioned that they had a good squad this past year. They actually had 3 guys that got drafted into the NBA, 2 in the first round, Cody Williams and Tristan Da Silva, and then KJ Simpson, who was really kind of the leader of the team, got drafted in the second round, and he was kind of the catalyst for that team, just a little bit undersized. That's why he wasn't drafted higher. And so you've got a pretty massive rebuild, not good timing for Colorado to have to go through this. And they have been able to manufacture some NIL money for transfers to bring in, but not to the level of what most of the teams in the Big 12 have in terms of the NIL money that they're able to kind of bring guys in with. So I know that Colorado, and I should say, I feel pretty confidently that Colorado is going to be picked in the preseason poll to be dead last in the Big 12. Having covered Tad Boyle for 13 years, they're not going to finish last, but they're probably not going to finish much higher than that unless there is some type of surprising development with some of these transfers they brought in. They brought in 2 Division II transfers that, if they hit lightning in a bottle there, maybe they can be competitive and be kind of in the middle of the conference, but that would really be the ceiling, to be honest with you. But Tad Boyle is the winningest coach in CU basketball history, and he's never had a team that seems to like, oh, he's had 1 in 13 years that has really underachieved. So they're going to be picked really low in the conference. The expectations are going to be low, but they'll finish at least 15th, I guess, is my going out on a limb prediction there.
They're also in the Maui Invitational this upcoming year, right?
Yeah.
What a trial by fire for this new roster.
Yeah.
They
They did try to schedule pretty weak outside of that Maui Invitational because it's pretty much a gauntlet out there. Yeah, you've got UConn going in that, a bunch of other schools, and then every week in the Big 12. It's going to be the most challenging season I think Tad Boyle has had yet as a coach.
Another team that I was interested in, and this is, I think, the Pac-12 kind of has it a little bit with with Juju and the USC women's basketball team. There is some interest, but it doesn't feel like and Stanford with Cameron Brink. And so there's some schools kind of stars here or there, but I feel like the Big 12 across the board is really interested in kind of women's basketball. It's a big basketball conference on both sides. I know Colorado's really good at women's basketball, but I think they graduated a bit off of that team. What is the Colorado women's team bringing to the party to kind of, because in the men's game, there's like 5 teams that are really good across the board. The women's team, it feels like Iowa State is kind of towards the top, and there's a few other good teams, but it's much less top heavy than the men's game is. So I think Colorado, if they're, at least from my experience, they could be towards the top, but I don't know them that well from last year to this year.
They'd probably be considered middle of the conference, I think, going in this first year back in the Big 12. J.R. Payne had Colorado in the Sweet 16 the past 2 seasons. They actually knocked off number 1 ranked LSU in the opener last year. It was a big moment for her program. But they lost a ton of people. Again, this is not, as good a coach as she's proven to be, developing a pretty dormant program into 2 Sweet 16s back to back. They don't have the NIL budget. So I would think it would be harder for them to pull up into competing for the conference championship again this year, but it'll be a scrappy bunch. J.R. Payne usually has those girls ready to play pretty hard, and they've kind of exceeded expectations again, like Tad Boyle often does. They develop better than your average coach, and so they're always kind of scrappy in that sense. But don't see them again competing for the conference championship.
2-part question for you here. What does Ralphie do in the off season? 1, and 2, have they considered taking Ralphie around the basketball arena similar to what they do before football games? That would be an absolute spectacle that I would sign up for.
You just want to see a viral video, don't you? Like, no, I don't think that would be a good idea.
So I was a kicker at Iowa State, and kickers are out there before pregame. So we were out there when Ralphie would run, and I remember Ralphie coming around that turn. And the coach was like, all right, Grant, get up onto the stands. I was like, nah, I'm fine. Ralphie's coming right at me. And I had to get up on the bench and like almost up into the crowd because I was like, oh shit, Ralphie's coming right at me here.
And he's huge.
I think Ralphie's a she.
Sorry, Ralphie.
She.
She. Ralphie, the Buffalo, is enormous.
You don't talk about a lady like that.
I'm sorry.
But to answer your first question there, I actually did a 5-part series on the whole Ralphie program a couple off seasons ago. And she loves to play with traffic cones, like those big construction cones. She likes to flip those up in the air. And then like the industrial sweeps that they do on the roads, she'll just like brush up against that. And they've got an assistant coach, Colton Bear, that she has a special relationship with. She gets excited. The current Ralphie 6, is very much a people's Buffalo, I guess, if you will. She loves to interact with them. Ralphie 5, the previous one that retired a couple of years ago, was very, very into the action of game day, but maybe not as cordial with people. And so they like that aspect of this current Ralphie. She sometimes doesn't feel like running quite as much as some of the former Ralphies. So it's always now it's like we're analyzing Ralphie runs before every game.
So
try to see how that
where is
turns
she
out.
at in the off season though? Is she just at
she's at a ranch, and it's not.
farm?
That's one of the lures of it, is that nobody knows the location, and you have to be pretty high in the whole Ralphie handlers program to actually know where she lives, and you're kind of sworn to secrecy. So
It's like
it's kind of a fun program.
Ralphie 6 is Jason Bourne.
The original Ralphie, I think, got kidnapped by Air Force back in the day. So
Oh,
they decided
yeah.
that they were not going to disclose her location anymore.
What does she do? So after she runs out and goes into her little trailer, what do they do with her on game day?
Well, she's got a bunch of grain back there. That's why she's super motivated once she sees that truck. It's like, I'm getting fed here. So she just kind of hangs out in there. Yeah.
Wow.
Just chilling. What a life, man. You got to go out, get all the attention, just run a clean sweep. Everyone's giving you applause, and you just run into a giant bucket of food, and then you just got to sit there for the rest of the day. What a life, man.
That sounds better than what Bevo had set up. Just hanging out, just pig
sitting there, and it's 150 degrees on the field.
Yeah. Oh, brutal.
Bevo also huge. Now the Ralphie is the biggest and most important live mascot in the conference. There you go.
The only live mascot?
Most important. I mean, the biggest. I don't think there's anybody else. I mean, the weird ass cowboy head from Oklahoma State was just creepy as all get out.
But yeah, that's probably the only live one.
Yeah, I think so.
At Big 12 Media Day, the mascots were just around us the whole time. And I got to say, the BYU Cougars, like dead eyes, that theyrew me off. That was the one mascot I was like, I'm paying attention to where you are. I don't need that coming up on me.
Oh man, I've when we were at Big 12 Media Days in 2012, 13. Anyway, it was the person who was in the Kansas State mascot and the one who was in the Oklahoma State mascot. Like I was just kind of around them, and like that Oklahoma State helmet or that Oklahoma State it's like 50 pounds, like just that big ass cowboy head. It's heavy as hell, and like just walking around with it. So if you were nervous, if anyone's ever nervous around that, you could walk at like a medium pace and get away from whoever that person is because they can't move very fast. So,
you smoke on the back of the head, they're probably gonna fall over.
You gotta smack them in the head and they gotta balance.
Imagine the neck strength you need.
You gotta be Ralphie 6 could do it.
Yeah. But Ralphie 6 is never going to get all that big. She's always going to be a pretty small buffalo. It's kind of a cool story. She was orphaned she was brought in by like a cow. And so she milked on a cow. And that's why she was like kind of malnutritioned a little bit when they got her, because it was this orphan buffalo that got abandoned by her parents. And so we're rooting for the underdog story with Ralphie 6. She does need to get to the 50 a little bit more consistently for my taste. But it's a cool backstory. They brought her in from Nebraska, which again, Colorado's rival state, and to be able to rescue this buffalo. I think everybody's rooting for her to be one of the good Ralphies.
I can feel her on the malnourished, because when I played at Colorado, when we were out there before the game, I had fans yelling at me about my weight. As a true freshman, I came in at 142, so I was pretty,
you deserved it.
Yeah, I was pretty thin out there. So that's all I've got for you, though. Adam, you got anything else for us?
No, I'm excited. It's too bad Iowa State's not on the schedule. Like I said, I'm looking forward to getting back out there. So hopefully they are on the schedule next year and we can do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I was hoping we'd see, Shadur and Travis in Ames or play against them in Boulder. Unfortunately, I don't think Iowa State will get the chance to do that, but we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for being flexible. I know I'd reached out to you a couple of days ago and you agreed to jump on. So we really appreciate your time, and we enjoyed getting to know you and Colorado a little bit more.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
It was I feel like Colorado feels like the warmest home back in the Big 12. He started saying, I'm gonna say this with an analogy, and I'm like, hey, you're speaking to the right person, buddy. You are speaking to the right person. But I don't know. Adam Munsterteiger, I was gonna inject. He said, I've got an analogy for you. I said, I got a guy who likes analogies. I am an analogy. I have an analogy all the time, even when you don't want one. I don't know. Colorado's going to be, I feel like it's a good cultural fit. Like getting Colorado back to the Big 12, that relationship that you had that was good, then just drifted away. And then you go, oh, you know what? Had it better back before. So I don't know. It was the first time that somebody actually acknowledged the point that we Iowa State fans, like the OG, Iowa States, Oklahoma States, the Kansas States, the ones that are like, hey, we actually have fans that show up. And like that's a thing that we've been saying. And it's finally the first time that somebody outside of there was like, this is nice that fans actually show up to these games. So that was good to hear.
And I can appreciate that he's like, you know what? We went and tried the shiny fancy thing, thought it was great, and realized grass is not always greener. We want to go back there. And I for one am glad that they are back here. However, though, I'm not completely sold on I've said this before, I'm not completely sold on Dean being a great head coach. We'll see. This is kind of not a make it or break it year for him, but they've got a lot of guys, obviously with Shadur, Travis Hunter, a lot of older guys on the team that they can't afford to not go to a bowl game with this roster. And to be curious to see how they reload next year when Iowa State does play them.
Yeah, I use that Ingebrigtsen example, and I think it's kind of true that like he wasn't on the podium, and he was either going to finish first or totally off of it. And that feels like Colorado is like they're going to be. I don't think like 6-6 doesn't to me feel like a. I mean, maybe they will. It feels like they're going to be like an 8-4 or better, or like 5-7 or worse. Like something is going to totally fall apart, or they're going to be really successful. It feels maybe it is. Any team could do anything, but it feels like middle of the Big 12 doesn't feel like a place that Colorado is going to be. It's either going to be near the top or near the bottom. That to me, it just feels like it's going to go one of those two extremes. I don't know which one it is.
And I think they need to come out of their non-con at least 2-1 because North Dakota State is no slouch. They are good. Nebraska
and they're good where Colorado's bad.
Yes, and Nebraska is going to be much improved this year. Matt Rule's a really good coach. They've got that quarterback Dylan Raiola, who was the top 3 quarterback in his class, looking like Patrick Mahomes going into training camp. That kid's good. I mean, Nebraska is good, and they're going to be good this year. And Matt Rule has kind of flipped that roster, so they might be competing for, at the very least, a bowl game this year. But yeah, fun interview with Adam. Again, I appreciate him coming on. I hope that we get a chance to interview him again next year, or maybe even later this year when Iowa State plays him in basketball. But next year for sure when Iowa State plays Colorado in football. Hope to get him back on.
Yeah, same. That's all I got.
Okay, sweet. So as Jeff mentioned, next week we wrap up our 4-part kind of mini series inside the summer series with someone from the 4 new schools. And next week we've got a pretty big one. We got a guy coming on from ESPN who is a former ASU. He's an ASU alum. So we'll be really interested to get him on. Looking forward to it. Should be fun. We got a couple more fun interviews lined up before the season starts. We are about 3 weeks away from
already. Yeah, we're
season starting. Yeah,
we're into August, man.
Yeah, we are. So
football month.
There's football this month. So awesome. I appreciate his time. It's always fun doing it with you too, Jeff. So I'm just rambling now. Thank you to all of our loyal listeners who are still listening. And as always, remember, adopt, don't shop.